Could you just give us some clarity here? From your perspective, are the markets worried too much about UniCredit and the Italian banking system?
Well, all in all, I think we're, is really panic selling. There's no real understanding and a bit of confusion about the NPL situation in Italy. The market is not really discounting also the level of provisions that Italian banks have put through during these years and the value of the collaterals. So I can see for UniCredit we have a very high level of provisioning. If we look at the total NPLs, we are at 61%. If we look at the bad loans, we are at 53%, which is one of the highest we have in Italy, and very high for European level. Then if we discount also the value of the NPLs, our level of coverage is to 90%. So it's really panic selling. So we don't understand really why this is happening.
This latest focus came as a result of an ECB initiative. Do you think that the ECB should take some responsibility for creating what you're describing as panic selling?
Well, I'm not sure that anybody has to take responsibility. The ECB is doing what ECB asked to UniCredit and other Italian banks, and also other European banks, not only Italian banks, because we tend to concentrate on Italian banking industry. In reality, the same request has been done to many other banks that fall under the ECB watch. Is just to provide data about NPLs. This is part of the routine activity of ECB, so nothing special there.
But Gianni, if I look back at the playbook and how people sold off on Italian banks last time, two of the reasons why they sold off of them at the height of the crisis was, one, the relationship with the state and the holding of so much sovereign, and secondly, because there were so many small banks that were undercapitalised as well. Let's spin forward to 2016. Are either of those two factors relevant for the current sell-off?
I don't think so. I think that the Italian banking industry is undergoing a huge and deep restructuring. We have also the actions taken by the Italian government, for instance, for the Banca Popolari. We'll be witnessing during this year consolidation in the banking industry. We did have the problem of the 4 small banks that were bailed in at the end of last year, but also in as much as the holding of Italian sovereign, I think is the right level for Italian banks. So I don't really think that there is any particular worry about the Italian banking industry.
But the size of the non-performing loan book across the industry is still too large. Of the trillion euros or so across Europe, over a third of that is in the Italian banking system alone. Why hasn't this NPL portfolio been sold down in the time that the ECB has provided cover through lower rates?
Well, you have to remember that if you look at Italy, the Italian banking industry didn't go through the heavy bailout, let's say, or help from the states that we had in other countries. I think that the Italian government put up only something like 4 billion that has been repaid. And if you compare this to what has been going in other countries, in Europe, clearly this is a sign that the Italian banks were able to face the problem by themselves, and maybe they had less problems than other banks in other countries. It's also a matter of market. So if you look at there is no market for the selling of loans. There is now a request from the Italian government that is working out with the ECB and the European community for the creation of a bad bank. Now there is a new proposition that has been put on the table by the Minister of Finance. They are working out. Let's see if this will happen.
But there is always a buyer if the price is low enough. So there is a market for these assets as long as you're prepared to take the haircut on them. Why should we be going into a bad bank scenario, relieving the balance sheets of Italian banks who have not done the job themselves?
Well, first of all, we need also to consider that you can go through a fire sale where obviously you have speculators that come in and want to buy at a price that is not reflecting the intrinsic value of the collateral. So obviously this is not acceptable to banks. Then again, Italian banks did a lot in the last few years. They were not held by the government in the sense that there was no need for that at the time. other banks in other countries did receive help from the government. So today we have a sort of position and situation for Italian banks that are under pressure, and we'll see in the market. By the way, the pressure on the banking industry is not only related to Italian banks, because you see pressure across the board in the market for all banks in Europe. So we believe that, in a proper way, without undue help from the government, would be the right moment maybe to have a bad bank.
Gianni.